Hello and welcome to Z Companion. I'm Anjali and today we're talking about house extensions. Understanding the jargon. Now, if you're considering extending your home or perhaps you're in the process already and you have any questions, please give us a call. We would love to hear from you. It's free phone 0800 408 6700 and we have an expert in the studio with us this evening here to answer your questions, so please do give us a call. Now, I'm joined in the studio by a building designer who works for KDB Designs. His name is Kish Bhudia and he's been in the industry for over 20 years and he also writes articles on planning issues for a number of publications. Kish, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Really good to have you here on Z Companion. Welcome. So first of all, how did you get to becoming a building designer?
Well, ever since I was young, I wanted to be an architect and design buildings. When I was at university, I studied building surveying, and during my year out, I got a job with Brent Council. So I got a real taste of what it was like working in the industry, and I really enjoyed that. So I decided to leave university, work for the council, and I did my degree part-time. Basically, my job as a building inspector was to check the plans that people were submitting to the council, and then I was going out on site to check the works were being done properly. And I learned a lot there, and I enjoyed it. But whilst I was doing that, I got a feel for what the other architects were doing, submitting the plans, and I thought I could do better than they were doing. So I decided to sort of learn to draw and started doing architecture. So that's how I got into that. But during that process, I've also done other things. I've worked as a building surveyor, as an architectural consultant, and I opened up my business about 10 years ago. And it's basically snowballed from there. So
KDB Designs is actually your company and you cover all aspects of the process from planning all the way to completion?
Correct, yeah. So basically what we do, we take the entire project, we take the hassle out of obtaining planning permission. So we do the planning approvals, the building approval, Thames water approvals, party wall agreements, and we can also project manage the project as well if the client wants us to do. It's basically, it's a tailor-made service. It's whatever the client wants us, as little or as much as you want done.
Okay. Yeah. Now, how common is extending one's home in our South Asian community?
Oh, in this area, it's extremely common. Northwest London, boroughs of Brent, Barnet and Harrow are predominantly occupied by Gujarati people. And I would say probably about 70–80% of our clients are from the Gujarati community. So we serve that community. People of all different ages, different backgrounds, different needs, different requirements, small houses, big houses, mansions. We cover the whole range. Yeah. So you have the younger generation also participating in this process? Absolutely, yeah. Basically, anyone that owns a home or a flat, everyone's looking to do an extension or a loft conversion at the moment. And
it can be a really nice idea because especially today when it's so hard to buy a home, to get a mortgage.
Correct.
Instead of perhaps taking that step by extending your home, you can create that space
that's right.
that you're looking for, as well as increase the value of your property.
That's right. You're basically adding your mark to the property. Often people want to extend because they don't want to move due to financial restrictions or because they're happy in the location they are. Right. For schools, stations, shops, family, and even temples. People want to be close by to their temples.
Right. So why move when you can extend your space right where you are?
That's right, yeah. But what's happened over the years is that people have extended so much now that there's a limit. You've extended backwards, you've done a loft conversion. People are now beginning to do basements. They're becoming more popular. Not so much in this area, but that's probably going to be the next big thing now, basements.
Now, what would you say to someone who says, I don't need a building designer, I can do this myself, or I'll just go get my uncle to help me and we'll do it together? What would you say to them?
I think that happens quite a lot, actually. We get people coming to us after they've done that. So basically, for a small, modest job, a layperson could probably do that. And there's a lot of building designers out there who are not technically qualified or experienced. They can draw plans, they can submit it to the council. But when you have a problem or the job's more complicated, you need somebody that's got qualifications and expertise and experience.
Okay. Yeah. So that's really ensuring that you get everything done properly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So if any problems occur, it can be rectified.
You need somebody that's got professional qualification behind them, some letters after them effectively.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's peace of mind, really.
Now, so say, for example, I've decided I would like to extend my home. What is the process, or what would I do?
So basically, you'd call an architect in. So if you rang us, we'd come and see you first, and we'd look at your property. We'd get an idea from you what you'd like to do, and we can then give you options as to what's possible. And between the two of us, we'd agree on what can be done, cannot be done. We start preparing plans, and then we go for the planning approval. Then we do your building approval, and we get approvals for Thames water, and then we try and find a contractor for you.
Right.
And also we get party wall agreements. They're very important. So basically we're doing everything that needs to be done in order for you to take your project from inception to completion.
Now that's a lot of approvals in there.
There is, yeah.
I read an article last year in the papers saying that we actually don't need any of these permissions at all, and we can just build away. Is that true?
No, there was a lot of hype in the press last year early on, but what the government then did was they introduced the 6 metre and 8 metre extension rule. So on a semi-detached property or a terrace property, you can extend up to 6 metres,
right.
and on a detached property, you can extend up to 8 metres. But there's a lot of clauses and fine print attached to those, so it's not straightforward, and you still need to get approval. And you still need to consult your neighbours.
Right.
Without your neighbours' consent, you can't build those extensions.
That's amazing, because a lot of us, I think there's a lot of myth being perpetuated in the public and in the media about this.
And also a lot of builders perpetuate the myth because builders like to work without an architect involved. It means they can get away with a lot of things.
Right,
So
like cutting corners and charging you less just to get work.
Because once the job's done, they've gone, they've taken your money and they've disappeared.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, what are some of the most common mistakes we might be making with the process?
Well, the common mistakes, one that you mentioned already, is not employing the right architect. You've got to get somebody that's a professional.
Yeah.
Okay. Secondly, you need to make sure you take your architect's advice as well. Try and appoint a good, reputable builder,
right.
either through the architect or through your own recommended sources. Get a recommendation from family and friends, or have a walk around your estate where you live, and you'll see people doing extensions and lofts. You see a skip outside. Walk into the property. Most good builders won't mind you walking into their sites, and you'll get an idea whether they're a good builder or not.
The only thing is, you talk about getting an architect, but when I think of getting an architect, all I can think of is lots of money going out of my bank. I think they are really expensive. Is that correct?
Not true, no. I mean, it depends on the service. I mean, you can get an architect from a central London office. It's going to charge you quite a high rate for doing something that you might not necessarily need. But there's all different ranges of architects all charging different rates. So you can find somebody that's tailor fit for your purpose. And also what you've got to bear in mind is that service they're providing is very valuable. And as a percentage of the whole contract value, it's very small. So typically about maybe between sort of 7 and 10% for the architect's fees and planning fees and building inspector's fees is what you should be looking to pay for.
Now, do I have to have an architect for the entire process, or can I pick and choose when I have him?
No, you need it fundamentally for the initial stages, which is planning, building, Thames Water, party wall agreements. Once your builders are on site, if you've got a good quality building contractor, he could probably manage a project without the architect. But if you've got a more complex project or you're looking to make changes throughout, then it's best to have the architect on board. Because it's peace of mind also to know that their builder is following your drawings and doing the job as it should be done. The building inspector is also checking the work, but probably not as thoroughly as your architect would do.
Now, when it comes to builders, that's quite an area in itself, because you hear stories of so many cowboy builders out there, and people are getting ripped off, or work start and they're not completed, and then you're left in the lurch. What can you do if you're in a situation like that where you have a cowboy builder on your hands?
Well, typically, people tend to employ cowboy builders, one, because they're cheap. So if you don't go for the cheapest contractor, you're taking one box off, so you're not going to get a cowboy builder in that case. When you're getting estimates, try and get for 5 or 6 estimates, take away the cheapest and the most expensive, and look at the average prices, and go and look at the contractor's work, see something he's finished and something he's currently working on, and that'll be a good guide. Brilliant. But if you've got a cowboy builder already, best thing to do is really sort of just cut your ties, cut your losses, let the contractor go and find somebody else. That typically tends to be the best way of resolving the matter.
Now we have someone on the line who'd love to speak with you, Kish.
Okay.
Hello there, what's your name?
My name is Bhupendra Patel.
Thank you for calling, Mr. Patel. What's your question?
My question is, I got a 3-story building house here in Brighton. I got a shop downstairs and 2 floors above the shop.
Okay.
Yeah.
At the moment is one like 4-bedroom flat with living room. I want to turn into the 2-story building into 2 flat.
Okay, thank you for the question, Mr. Patel. Were you able to get that?
My understanding is that you've got a shop with 2 floors above, and you're looking to convert the building into 2 separate flats.
That's right.
Yeah. So typically, is it a high street shop? Is it a high street shop?
Sorry?
Is it a high street shop?
Well, don't call it. It's a high road, but it's not high street.
Yeah. Typically, that sort of thing should be possible. As long as you've got separate entrance at the front, you can typically convert 1 floor into 1 flat and the floor above into a separate flat. The council will look...
I've got entrance from the flat,
Yeah, but the
shop.
Okay, well...
I can't come in from the shop.
Okay, but typically the council would usually prefer the entrance to be from the front of the shop. But it's
Yeah, but I can't do it.
okay. Well, then you might have trouble because the preference is to have entrances from the front. But it's a very specific question, so maybe I can talk to you afterwards.
Is that
Yeah,
okay,
okay.
Mr. Patel? Kish will
Yeah.
give you a call after the show to discuss your specific situation.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, then.
thank you.
Thanks,
I'll
Mr.
talk to you
Patel.
afterwards.
Thank you for calling. We'll speak to you
And my
after the
number?
show. Thank you. We do have your number indeed. Yes,
Thank
we
you.
do. Thank you so much.
01273.
We have your, yes, we do have your number. Thank you, Mr. Patel. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, that's quite a specific situation, so it'd be
It is,
wonderful
yeah.
if you could please.
Yeah, I'm happy to give
speak
general advice, but specific questions we can answer afterwards.
Of course, it
Yeah.
takes a bit. It's more in depth and
It
takes
is,
a
yeah.
bit more time. Thank you. No, I
Absolutely,
appreciate
yeah.
that very much. No, so coming back to what you were saying about the builders.
Mm-hmm.
What if you have a contract in place? Does that not protect you?
It does give you a degree of protection, yes, because that's it's valid in the court of law. So if you've got a contract, it says what you're going to do, how much it's going to cost, what the payment terms are, then you've got a great deal of protection. But the cowboy builders typically would work without a contract or without a valid contract.
Yeah.
So you've got to make sure it's a proper contract. And again, if you've got a contract administrator or an architect supervising, you've got somebody to administer the contract itself. So it has a bit more weight.
Yes. Now, I'd just like to come to actually a question because we had some callers who got in touch with us earlier in the day,
Okay.
but they're not really able to be on air with us this evening. I actually did have a question from another Mr. Patel, but he's from Bolton.
Okay.
And his question is that he would like to create an extension of a toilet and a bathroom outside of his back door into the garden because his wife is disabled.
Okay.
Is it possible for him to do that?
It should be, yeah. There's no reason why an extension on most properties is usually always possible. If his wife is disabled, he should also maybe try and get a grant. Local authorities do give grants for disabled works. They'd send an occupational therapist around and they'd assess her needs, and they might make a recommendation as to what she needs specifically. They would then employ an architect to design that for them and go through the process of getting a planning application and building approval.
Right.
And they would offer either a full grant or a part-funded grant. It depends on the individual case.
Now, with the grant, what sort of sums of money are we talking about?
It can vary anywhere between £2,000-3,000 up to about, I think it's maximum about £15,000.
Right.
Some years ago, they would actually fund the entire project, so that you can get grants of £20,000-25,000 where they would actually build the entire extension for you. But nowadays, because the funding is very limited and there's more people needing the grants, it's very restrictive.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who would he approach in the first instance to explore this opportunity?
You can try your GP initially. You'd have to get a referral from your GP, and you can contact the housing department
Okay.
of the council. Yeah.
Great, thank you for answering that. And Mr. Patel, if you are watching this evening, then I hope that answers your question. I hope that's enough information for you. But if it's not, remember you can get in touch with us. Please give us a call, and we can give you further information if you require. Thank you for that. So the contract really would protect us in terms of any cowboy builders. How many of us go ahead with building works without a contract?
A great deal. I would say probably about 70-80%. We see a lot of people employing contractors with no contract at all, nothing in writing. And often if there is, it's very vague. It's got the contractor's name, no address, it's got a sum, but it doesn't stipulate what works are going to be done or what the payment terms are.
Right.
So often you've got to check whether the contractor's a limited company, whether it's VAT registered. Those are important checklists you've got to do.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And I want to come back to your checklist, actually. I think that's quite important. But before we do have someone on the line who'd love to speak with you. Hi there, what's your name?
Hello.
Hi there, what's your
Hello.
name?
My name is Ali Khan.
Thank you for
I'm
calling.
speaking from Sunderland.
Thank you, Mr. Khan, for calling. What would you like to ask, Kish?
My house is built long ago, but my front is towards the garden that is quite all right. But the road, the main road through which we enter into the house is the back of the house. We want to change that back portion as the front one. So how can we go for that one? Because in the back there are so many drainage pipes going on, which looks ugly when you enter into the house.
Okay.
And we cannot go into the front where the situation is quite different. There is a garden on the front.
Okay, so my understanding is, again, you've got the main garden at the front of the house and a shorter garden at the back, and your main entrance is through the back currently?
Yes, it was made from the front with the garden, but the entrance is at the back.
Okay.
And when we enter into the garden and into the house, we see the whole pipes are going down, which looks very ugly.
Okay. I mean, with something like that, I mean, you can either appoint an architect to come and view your property, and they might be able to give you some general advice, or you can often call your council and they'll be able to give you general advice also. The local planning department in most authorities operate what they call a duty planning service. So you can go there with a photograph or some sketches, and they're able to give you some guidance as to what is and isn't possible. But often the council will generally suggest that you should make a planning application for what you'd like to do, and then they'd assess it on its merits.
Is it possible to get it changed like that one? The back can be changed to the front side.
Yeah, without actually seeing the property, it's very difficult to give you a yes or no answer, and it's very specific. But I think if you speak to the council or get a local architect who's done work in the area, they will be able to tell you what is and isn't possible. Yeah.
Does that help,
Okay.
Mr.
Thank you very
Khan?
much.
Yeah, no, you're welcome.
Thank you for
calling.
getting in touch with us. Thank you very much indeed.
Bye.
You know, for many of these inquiries, for someone to then go forward and find solutions, who is the first port? Who should they approach in their local area?
Usually a local architect's going to be the best person to approach, because the architect's going to be familiar with the planning officers, the rules and regulations for the area. They know local builders.
So is that very specific to one's area?
Absolutely,
Right,
yeah.
okay.
There's no point in employing an architect from a different side of the city who
Right.
doesn't work locally. So a local architect's based locally, knows local rules. That's the best way forward, really.
Okay,
Yeah,
right.
and in any given area, there's a multitude of architects, engineers, and surveyors available. It doesn't have to be an architect; it can be a draftsperson, it could be a structural engineer. I'm a chartered architectural technologist. Any of those fields will do.
Great. Now, I actually have another call from one of our viewers who called earlier in the day, but she wasn't
Okay.
able to come on air and
Okay.
speak with you directly this evening. Her name is Tajinder Gill from South Buckinghamshire, and she says that she has a swimming pool. It's in her back garden. She has a swimming pool with a heater,
Okay.
and she would like to remove it and build a children's nursery instead. So she'd like to know, is that possible? And if so, how can she go about doing that?
Okay.
And the second part to that question is, she has a side alleyway door, which she'd like to use for the children to enter and exit. Is she allowed to do that?
Okay. I would say, from the information you've given me, I would say it's probably going to be unlikely, because what you're trying to do there is you've got a residential property and you're trying to make it a commercial. So you're basically introducing a nursery at the back of the garden. So for a number of reasons, the council are probably going to say no to that. The neighbours are probably going to object regarding noise,
Yeah.
and there's health and safety issues. And typically the council would prefer residential property stay as residential, commercial and commercial. So you usually can't mix the two together.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, you could always try. There's no harm in trying, but I would say I wouldn't spend a lot of money and get your hopes up high on that one.
Okay, great. Thank you for answering that. And Tajinder, if you are watching this evening, then I hope that answers your question. But remember, if you want further information, or perhaps you'd like to speak to Kish after the show about your specific situation, you can always give us a call and he will be available for you after the show. Now, we actually have someone on the line. Hello there, what's your name?
Hello.
Hi, what's your name?
Somebody, I told somebody.
Oh, I can hear my voice in the background, which means I think you have your television on. Can I please ask that you please turn the volume down and just listen to me through your phone?
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, what's your name? Tell me.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi, what's your name? Who's calling?
My name is Christian, calling from Coventry.
Thank you for calling. What's your question?
My house has a solid wall, no cavity. It's an old house. I was thinking to get some insulation put either inside or outside the house to protect the heat.
Yeah.
How should I go about it?
Okay, it's a good question. It's quite straightforward. There are actually specialist companies that do cavity wall injection. It's a very straightforward process. It takes maybe a day.
The thing is that there's no cavity in the wall.
There's no cavities, beg your pardon. Well, then the only way to do that is basically to insulate it either internally or externally. Internally can be quite costly and damaging, because you then got to remove all your skirtings, your door frames, your architraves. It's very difficult to do that internally. Externally, again, it's possible, but you might end up having to change your window sills, your gutters, and your fascia boards. There is a benefit, obviously, because you'll be saving heat, saving energy, and lowering your bills. But you need to really look at the cost. Sometimes it's not very cost-effective to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
To whom should I approach? for this?
Like I said, there are companies that do insulation like this, and also a general builder would be give you would be able to give you advice on this also.
Is there any council or government?
There are certain organisations that deal with insulation. So if you look on the website, you'll be able to find those organisations, and they would have recommended contractors that do that sort of work in your area.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Christian, you're in the Coventry area, so what we can also do is we can look up a few builders and local contacts in your local area, and we'll actually send you an email. So if you leave your email address with our with the number that you just called on, then we can help you with that and send you some information.
Okay.
Thank you for getting in touch with us. Really appreciate your call.
Thank you for calling.
Okay. Now, Kish, what about minor things? So say, for example, I want to re-roof my house, or maybe I want to build a shed, or maybe I just want to change my doors and windows.
Yeah.
Do I still need approvals for that?
You do, and that's actually one of the bigger problems also, because people often change the roof, retiling, and don't get building regulations approval because the roofing company has told them they don't need to do it. Typical line is, we've been doing this for 20, 30 years, we've never had to do it before. But you do need building approval, and the building inspector is basically coming out on site to check the structure is sound, and that the tiles are laid on properly, it's weatherproofed, and that the roof is properly insulated and ventilated to current standards.
Right.
There's a small fee, I think it's about £200-300 depending on your local authority, 1 or 2 site visits. Builders often don't want to do it because it causes them a delay, and it means they might have to do more work, but it is something that needs to be done. Same applies for taking out chimneys and through lounges or putting in a toilet downstairs. They're all minor works. They do need building regulations approval, but it doesn't take 8 weeks. It just takes a matter of days. You can often fill an online form in to your local authority. You pay a small fee. Building inspector comes on site and checks the work, and you get a certificate at the end. And that certificate's very important. It's called a completion certificate. You will need that if you sell your property.
What are the consequences of not getting approvals, even for these sorts of things?
Okay, well, currently what's happening is building inspectors are actually catching people in the act when they're doing the work.
Right.
So they're not going to fine you, but they're basically, you've got to pay a higher fee to have the works inspected. And often if you're at a certain stage, a building inspector might want the works exposed, so you might have to then open up the floors of the roof, etc., so they can inspect it, and that could be a cost issue for you. And the other issue is if you have the works completed and you don't get caught for a couple of years, when you come to sell your property, when the surveyors do the searches and the surveys, they might realise you've done work without local authority approval, and that will cause you delay in selling your property. Often you then have to get the building inspector out at that stage.
Gotcha.
So again, a cost implication there as well.
So eventually you'll end up paying, so just usually, do it properly up front.
Get it done properly up front, it's a very small fee to pay. Usually people, the only reason they don't want to do it is to save a few £100s.
Yes.
But it could be a lot more to pay in the long run.
Yeah. It's really worth just, investing a little bit more.
Absolutely.
And doing it right, and saving yourself all that hassle down the line.
That's right. Yeah, but a lot of it's due to sort of ignorance. People don't know, and people take the advice from a builder, and the builder's not always the best person to advise them. You've got to speak to a professional.
Right.
It's very easy to pick up the phone and speak to the council.
Yes.
There's always a planning officer or a building inspector available to take calls, and they can advise you.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know. Is it also? I've also been reading articles about people building sheds and then renting it out.
That's right.
As accommodation. Is that? And that's not legal, is it?
That's not legal, and there's a lot of it going on, especially in the northwest area. Unfortunately, it's a lot of the Asian community doing that, where they're building sheds, renting them out. Now, the councils take a dim view on this. So in the olden days, they would make you take the kitchen and bathroom out. Nowadays, they make you demolish the entire structure. So that can be quite difficult.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, but it does create challenges then. And if you get found out, what are the repercussions of that?
Well, the council will actually make you demolish it first of all.
Oh,
if you don't demolish it, the council will come in and demolish it for you, and then fine you on top of that as well.
Right.
So yes, severe repercussions for that. Yeah.
Kish, unfortunately, our time has come to an end this evening, but I really very much appreciate having you here. It's been incredibly informative. I do believe, like our callers, also have been very fortunate to have you to help them with their issues, and thank you for also offering to call some of them back and help them with their specific situations.
Okay.
It's really
Thank you for having me on the show.
It's been an honour to have you here. Thank you very much for being with us this evening. And to all of those who have tuned in this evening, thank you very much for watching this evening, and thank you to our callers for your wonderful questions. And we would love for you to take away these 3 key points with you this evening. The first of all really is seek professional advice. It's really important that you just do it properly and don't skimp on doing a professional job with it, because you'll save so much more money and time down the line. It's really important to go with recommendations. So if someone can recommend a builder or an architect or anyone involved in the process, it's far better to do that, and you're likely to have someone really good on your team. And finally, do have a realistic budget. So it's important, apart from spending more than you need to, try not to spend too little either, because sometimes you could incur those costs further down the line. Thank you again for joining us this evening. Thank you to our callers for your wonderful questions. And remember, if any of you have any further questions, you can email us zcompanion@ztv.co.uk. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Good night.